Colonel Macgregor, welcome back to London Real.
Thanks, Brian. Happy to be here.
Love to get your thoughts on the last 2 weeks. We obviously saw this historic action with, I guess it was a joint U.S.-Israel military strike on Iran. Obviously, the big bunker buster bombs, the stealth bombers on a stealth mission. And now we're a week later and markets are at the all-time high. Oil is back down. So I guess everything is fine. Is that right, Colonel?
Well, I think it's important to realize that this began while we were, at least in theory, talking to the Iranians about a negotiated settlement revolving around the nuclear material that the Iranians wanted to maintain and enrich for civil use as opposed to bomb building. And in the midst of all of this, the Israelis launched a surprise attack. And of course, we were complicit because Witkoff and the president and others who were involved in these discussions conveyed the impression that the discussions were real. Then at the last minute, we suddenly reversed our position and said no enrichment at all. And bang, you got this surprise attack by the Israelis. It seems as though it didn't take very long for the Israelis to run through their arsenal of missiles. And that seems to have been a huge issue for them. The Iranians were caught off guard. They were a little shaken initially. But what surprised the Israelis and the United States, I think all of us who were watching this, is how rapidly they recovered from the surprise. And then they began to fire missiles, large numbers of missiles, hundreds of missiles every day. And ultimately, if you look at the map and you look at the targets were overwhelmingly military and commercial. Certainly the ports, these facilities, they were very effective. And frankly, Israel was running out of missiles. It certainly had almost none with which to defend itself. We went through a lot of missiles because we had our ships offshore, the Aegis-class destroyers and so forth, firing missiles to protect Israel. And, you can only go through so many, perhaps 50 per ship out of an arsenal of 100, say 50 are air-to-air and missile defense missiles. The other 50 are strike missiles ashore for use ashore. So it doesn't take very long if you're firing at least 2 missiles at every incoming missile to go through your stock of air and missile defense missiles. So I think that happened to Israel. And quite frankly, the damage they were sustaining was very severe. Now, publicly, the Israelis dismissed all of that. And the narrative was, oh, we're, robust, irresistible, invincible, invulnerable. But then we had Ben-Gvir, who's a part of the inner circle of people that want to wipe out what remains of Gaza and attack virtually anybody in the region that refuses to submit. And he said, we were surprised by the capabilities and the size of the Iranian arsenal, because he had been asked, why are you turning to the Americans already? It's only been a few days. Well, we were surprised at what the Iranians could do. Then subsequently, you had a speech that you can go online and listen to by Smotrich, the finance minister, another hardcore advocate for total destruction in Gaza and the war with Iran. And he said, we've got maybe a week, 2 weeks before the entire Israeli economy implodes. So it's pretty obvious at that stage that the Iranians had achieved much of their goal, which was to demonstrate that they could not be defeated and that they could ultimately destroy Israel.
How do you get out of a rat race? How do you create wealth not only for yourself, but also for the generations to come after?
I am absolutely amazed with the quality of companies that we're getting exposure to.
We go on to Zoom calls with the innovators and the folks who are building new applications in metaverse, blockchain, artificial intelligence, decentralized finance.
What's going on, everybody? Thumbs up if you can see me.
We are focusing on early stage investment.
And the quality of people that we're getting exposure to, whether it be Dan Tapiero with 1RT, Jason Ma from Open, Yatsu from Animoca.
It's been a phenomenal experience thus far. It has far exceeded my expectations.
We are focusing on cutting edge technologies.
I view it now as the best investment I've ever made. The upside I view is unlimited.
And as a retail investor, I would never get this exposure anywhere else outside of Investment Club.
See you in the Investment Club.
I think that's when the Israelis approached President Trump and said, we've got to have a ceasefire. And that's what they ultimately were given. Now, you have at the same time the decision by the president to launch these strikes. And it's a very interesting event, Brian, because we've seen things like this in the past. And I'll go to that in a second. He seems to have talked to the Iranians and made it clear to them that we were going to go in and hit these 3 alleged nuclear development sites. And that was it. That's all we were going to do. Nothing more, nothing less. And they agreed to stand down. We did not, or we were not subject to any air and missile defense fire. We attacked these sites with the conventional munitions that we have. President Trump then went forward and announced victory, assuring everybody that this was a great success. We destroyed all of these sites. And he said the war is over. I mean, that's really the way it went down. And then he said, now we want peace. This is all very fascinating because, only Americans are the types to step forward and say, we're bombing you this morning. We're sending sandwiches and coffee over tomorrow afternoon because by evening we really want peace. Well, the problem is that we are now a co-belligerent in the war with Iran directly. Not that we weren't always there, but now it's unambiguous. And I don't think the war is over by any stretch of the imagination. But it's very clear that the Israelis and we, frankly, needed a pause. Now, why would we need a pause? Well, remember that if we just look at one type of missile, the Patriot missile, right now we can build about 660 of those a year. Well, that's not very many. So it's not as though you're going to suddenly flip the switch. It's 1943, and FDR called and said, I want you to surge 30,000 missiles. We can't do that. We don't have the capability. So I think we wanted a break because we're concerned about our arsenal. We have perhaps 10 days to 2 weeks of missiles right now, strike missiles and air and missile defense missiles for a war with a quote unquote peer competitor. That's not very much compared with what we have historically maintained. So that's one consideration. The other consideration is the Israelis are simply naked right now until they can replenish their arsenal. Now, that doesn't mean the war is over. It simply means we're at a pause. And at the same time, we're beginning to see other events in the region develop, most particularly what's been happening in the Caucasus with Azerbaijan. We can talk about that if you'd like. But I think the bottom line is this is the beginning, not the end. Maybe it's the end of the beginning of the new long war, because I see no evidence that the Israelis will accept anything other than total destruction of Iran, if necessary, or for that matter, anybody else in the region that challenges them. And there is no end to what's happening in Gaza. Every day I try to tune in and find out what's the state of these ceasefire talks. And I still see an impasse between Hamas and Israel. Israel wants no end to the destruction. They'll take a 60-day ceasefire. They'll take hostages back. But then they want to resume the war. Hamas doesn't want to resume the war. Well, there's no surprise in that. I think we would like to see this thing end, obviously, in Washington. But Israel is really in charge, not us. And I think that's the other thing that we need to come to terms with, that President Trump really is profoundly influenced and shaped in his thinking and behavior by the Israel lobby. Absolutely, without question.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.